What's up guys, this is David Cams and this is actually my first ever video. Now, some of you tech heads might know me from a channel called BTech. I was there for nearly 3 years and I produced hundreds of tech videos. I will link them in the description below. Go and check them out. Basil has taken over there. He's a great guy, but unfortunately my time there has come to an end. So I've started up a new channel. At BTech, we mainly did smartphones, focusing mostly on the camera tech, but here I can expand my love of cameras and we'll be covering all the camera news as well as smartphone tech, and we'll be doing concept renders and reviews as well, just like I did on BTech. But for now, with my very first episode, we've got a review of the brand new device that was just launched worldwide from Realme, the X3 SuperZoom. Last August, I went to Realme's European launch event. They are a smartphone company that is fairly well known outside of Europe, but less so here and especially in the UK. But since launching their brand at that event in Madrid, people are starting to recognize the name Realme. And for me, they are easily the best value for money that you can get in a smartphone right now. As well as the Realme X3 SuperZoom, which I have been using for about a week, they've also launched new wireless buds, a fitness smartwatch, and a pretty sweet looking TV. But let's talk about the phone. This is the Realme X3 SuperZoom. What we have here is an option for people who want P40 Pro like performance from their camera, but they don't want to spend 900 quid of their hard-earned cash for the privilege. Realme products are always ridiculously competitively priced, and while this isn't an outright flagship, it is still very well spec'd, and the camera tech is superb. So for €500 or £500, we get a Snapdragon 855 Plus chipset supported by a massive 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of UFS 3.0 storage with Realme's Turbo Write feature. The 4200 mAh battery has 30-watt fast charging. We've got a 120Hz 6.6-inch ultra smooth display, all of which points towards a really good phone for this sort of money. But that's before you add in the 64 megapixel quad camera system that has seriously impressed me with its 5x optical periscope zoom and 60x max digital zoom. The full specs for the camera are a 64 megapixel Samsung ISOCELL GW1 main sensor with a 6p f1.8 lens, meaning that there are 6 plastic elements to the lens. This sensor by default will use pixel binning to combine 4 adjacent pixels together into one, increasing the pixel size to 1.6 microns and outputting at 16 megapixels. You can shoot at 64 megapixels if you want the extra resolution. It lets you crop right in on a picture without any obvious drop in quality, but you won't get the benefit of HDR or any other AI shooting aids that you get in a regular photo mode. Accompanying that main lens is an ultra wide angle camera with an f2.3 aperture and an 8 megapixel resolution. This camera has a lens with a 119-degree field of view, which is nice and wide, and it produces very good quality wide angle shots, which don't seem too far away in quality and look from the main lens. There's also a 2 megapixel macro lens for extreme close-ups, capable of focusing as close as 4 centimeters. And finally, the lens at the top with the square Realme halo is the 5x periscope zoom, whose capabilities are placed just beyond the competitors such as the P40 Pro, offering a 60x magnification. This sensor is an 8 megapixel unit with an f3.4 aperture and optical image stabilization. The 5x optical focal length is the equivalent of 125mm in full frame terms, and it has impressive performance at 5x right up to, I would say, about 25x. It is possible to notice a very slight drop in quality once you go past 10x, but it is very small, becoming more noticeable as you approach 20 to 25x. Going all the way to 60x will give you similar results to other smartphone cameras that are capable of this magnification. Pretty unusable shots, not really much more than a blur. It is a very similar experience to the P40 Pro, but I have noticed that the Realme is quicker to achieve focus in the periscope camera than the Huawei device. When you switch to the P40 Pro's 5x lens, it's like the AI needs a few seconds to recognize what it's seeing, so you do get a sketchy preview until it's ready. Then it sharpens up and gives you a much better shot. But there's none of that here. As soon as you switch to the 5x, you get a nice clear image. Video performance is also very good with this device, capable of nice and stable 4K 60 frames per second footage and slow-mo recording at 240 and 480 frames per second continuously, with burst recordings at 960 frames per second. The 4K is good, but there are compromises, as you will not be able to shoot with the ultra wide angle lens at 4K or at 60 frames per second. It also warns you that there will be much higher power consumed at 4K, and it can get a little bit toasty after a while. So Realme are offering us P40 Pro-like camera performance, but for a lot less money. But how does it compare to what many people consider to be the very best smartphone camera on the market at the moment? Well, honestly, I think that Huawei might have some serious competition on its hands in the shape of the X3 SuperZoom. So the obvious way to compare these two phones would be in that periscope zoom. The Realme stretches it to 60 times, probably purely just to have the bragging rights over the P40 Pro. In comparison, the Realme does very well, giving similar results along most of the zoom range. It is though at the higher magnifications that the Huawei starts to show its class. They're both here at 50 times and the Huawei is definitely sharper. But I still think the Realme does pretty well. It's not quite as refined as the Huawei, but it is still very good. Night mode surprisingly seems to be where the Realme has an advantage. Let me make it clear though, the P40 Pro definitely has better outright performance in low light. The super sensitive RYYB sensor that Huawei have equipped it with is just unbeatable at the moment in poor lighting. With its maximum ISO value of 402,600, its regular photo mode is almost as capable as the night mode. But Realme say that this phone has the best night mode available on any smartphone. And when I put it side by side with the P40 Pro, it does seem that they are right to make that claim. Nightscape 4.0 includes AI Super Nightscape, which can detect how dark the scene is and switch between Super and Ultra Nightscape modes. Super will quickly capture the scene and still give you very good results in most nighttime situations, but in very dark scenes it will switch to Ultra mode and give you a short countdown while it snaps multiple shots and combines them all together for great results in impossible conditions. There is also Starry mode. If you go to the night mode, a starry icon appears at the top. Tap that icon and point the X3 SuperZoom at a clear night sky to use its AI to take 10 long exposure shots. It will take around about 4 or 5 minutes to complete the shot, but once it does, it enhances all the stars and reveals much more than what your eyes can see. This mode is supported with the main lens and the periscope camera. The zoom is used for capturing the constellations and the main is used for a wider view of the sky. When we take a look at some more of these shots side by side, you have to be impressed by the X3 SuperZoom. For a £500 phone, remember, there's not really anything else in this price range and it's almost half the price of the P40 Pro. Now, don't get me wrong, when you hold these two phones in your hand, you will easily be able to tell that the P40 Pro is a much more premium product. It's very, very well made, it is a beautiful design and it just feels gorgeous in the hand. The X3 SuperZoom does feel like a cheaper product, but if you want outstanding camera performance and you don't want to pay the best part of £1,000, this might be the way to go for you. There are only really a few areas that the X3 SuperZoom falls behind the P40 Pro in its camera performance. One is in the control of lens flare. It can be pretty bad on the X3, especially with the front camera. There are actually two front cameras in that screen cutout. One is a 32 megapixel unit and the other is an 8 megapixel unit. On the whole, they do perform very well, but they flare like crazy and even have some white vignetting on occasions. Although if you work with it, it can result in some quite nice shots sometimes. Another area it does lose to the P40 Pro is in its portrait mode. There's no fancy time of flight sensor here that you will find on the Huawei, so therefore the depth information will be far less accurate. You still get decent portrait shots out of it, although unlike the P40 Pro, it will make slight mistakes sometimes where it adds that blur. €500 is still arguably a mid-range price, but you do get so much more for your money here. 120Hz screen, a nice big battery, fast charging, 12 gigs of RAM, ultra fast storage and an excellent camera. It even looks good. This has got to be the best looking Realme phone to date. I do think, however, that this phone really should have a headphone jack. I really wish it had one. I just think it would have made it so much more appealing for customers in this price bracket. I really do like this phone. It is good value. 500 quid for similar camera performance to the P40 Pro. This definitely sounds like a bargain, but to be honest, I was hoping it would be a little bit cheaper. I know that sounds a bit weird, but Realme phones are usually extremely competitively priced. This one seems a little bit more expensive, but then you have to factor in it does have the new periscope tech on board. Let me know what you guys think about this phone. Does this one put Realme on your radar, or do you think that this is just a cheap P40 Pro knockoff? I think it's a great option for people who are into smartphone photography and who want to save a good few £100 on their next camera phone. But anyway, love to know what you think. Let me know down in the comments below. And thanks for watching the very first video on my new channel. If you know me from BTech, then I would be so grateful if you could help me grow and subscribe here for the latest tech, reviews, concepts and news. Thanks for watching, and I hope I will see you in the next one.